Hi, I'm Jackie.
And I'm Seth.
And this is Never TMI,
where we talk about real things.
And nothing is ever off limits. Emphasis on that today, guys.
Yeah, we're talking about some real stuff today. I was actually just thinking about that. I don't know. Never TMI was just, it was a name out of nowhere. Because we were thinking more along the lines of like relationship.
Yeah.
Something like, but we ended up with Never TMI.
Yeah.
But I love it because it's
like a reminder.
It's a reminder, and it's not just relationship focused, even though a lot of it is about relationships. It's just like, it doesn't limit us to talk about anything. And I think what we're talking about is literally just, us being vulnerable in our relationship. And again, it is about relationships today, but just the vulnerability.
Well, it's about more than relationships. It's about everything.
Well, I meant our relationship, but yes.
Oh.
We're talking
today,
about our relationship.
I thought you were saying Never TMI. I was like,
no.
I feel like I'm trying to think outside of the box of like, man, we can just be Never TMI about everything. But no, yes, today it's definitely about our relationship.
But now there's like this call, though, that we just have to, I feel like this responsibility to be transparent in what we're going through, and I guess that's just what we've signed up for now.
And not even like, well, we have to now. It's like that is our heart. Mm-hmm. It's just not always easy to do. Yeah. But like, I feel like on one hand, it can feel like really difficult, but on the other hand, it's like, man, I love it. And it's exciting, and it's like a challenge. And it's also like, this is the whole point, like to, I don't know, just be as real and raw and authentic and honest and vulnerable as possible, which is obviously a scary thing, but it's like, I don't know, that's the whole point. So it's exciting, nerve-wracking. And this is definitely one of those episodes where we have to remind ourselves to like, I don't know, like why we do this, And so yeah, we're just gonna be super honest and open and whatever. So I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about something that we've had to work through. Recently, this past weekend, I had the privilege to go hang out with some of my best friends from college. We played football together, and they're just friends for life kind of people, Mm-hmm. So we got to have an extended guys weekend this past weekend. We met down in Florida, and it was like we got to unplug. We just checked out.
Literally.
Checked out and just got to chill and hang out on the beach, mm-hmm. do some fishing and some guys stuff like that. But so I guess to preface this, going there, knowing it's a guys weekend, mm-hmm. knowing that we're going to be having drinks, and then there's also what's the proper word for it? Weed.
Mary Jane, marijuana.
Yeah, and then there's some weed that shows up there, and so it's just like,
well, I had
that
asked,
was something that we had talked about because knowing like, hey, it's a guys' weekend. I know, some of the guys are definitely not against it, and so it was something that we discussed going into it, knowing that there's a possibility that it's going to be there.
Kind of to have a game plan. Like I feel like we sat down and, I know we had mentioned in a previous episode, like our thoughts and feelings on it. Especially where we have dealt with it like in our marriage. So it was just something that we were like, okay, obviously like there is no like elephant in the room type of thing in our relationship. At least we try to not let there be. So it was like, let's attack this head on. What's the plan if that's there, so that that was kind of like the conversation. Well, that wasn't the conversation, but that was the topic of the conversation.
Yeah.
Going into it. Sorry, go ahead.
So long story short, it's there. I tell Jackie it's there. You know, I'm executing what we communicated to an extent.
Which I'll explain what we communicated in a minute.
Yeah, and so you know, it's essentially though, and I guess this is probably where you can chime in too. There was a breakdown in communication.
Okay, so the conversation that we had was, and man, there's backstory, and there's a different. I would recommend if you like have no idea how like where we're at with that. Recommend listening to it's a few podcasts back on like just our stance on weed, alcohol, whatever. But the conversation that we had was essentially like, you know, for me, it's not my favorite thing in the world. I think, for reasons I've like explained before, but I feel like I was like, okay, if every single person there, and there were seven guys, seven guys. If every single person there does it, then let me know. I think I either said like, it's fine, like then you can, but you need to let me know. Or I think it was just like, let me know if everyone's doing it and we'll just hit that when we get there or something like, but essentially how I think
Like
it was
if
posed.
Everyone but you isn't.
If every single person around you is, and you see it, and it's there, and it's just you guys, you know, okay. Not my favorite thing. He knows how I feel about it. This isn't like a thing that we do or he does, just that is like a part of our life, essentially.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's a very special occasion, and it's not done with the intent of like going to get roasted. It's just like a chill, you know.
Yeah, which I think the hard thing for me, and I'm sure like he works through it too. It's not like, I don't know. We literally have our next marriage counseling session. Like I'm kind of excited to talk about it. Just like the I don't know, like what our stance kind of should be, because we've kind of formulated our own stance on this. But the hard thing is like we don't get drunk. That's not like that is wrong for us. That is what we go by. Like we don't drink to get drunk, and that's like not a rule, but essentially like a boundary in our marriage and in our lives. So the hard thing about smoking for me is like that you are somewhat under the influence. Like I'm sure you can smoke and not get high, whatever. But it's like that piece of it, the legality piece of it. There's like, it just is murky. And I'm like, what's the difference between like getting drunk and getting high? Like, I just don't love the whole scene. So that was the conversation we had, was if every single person's doing it, it's just you guys, you're together, like it's kind of like a smoking a cigar situation. Not my fave, but cool, whatever. I think that's okay. It's never going to be my favorite thing. And again, we're still like formulating, is this something he should never, ever do? But again, right now it is very, very touchy and like special occasion. And so in my mind, they hadn't gotten together since, I mean, years and years and years. So I'm like, okay, special occasion. That was that.
Yeah. And so it's a special occasion thing with lots of parameters around it.
Yes.
So that being said, there at the beginning, that situation happened in the sense that everyone was there.
Yeah.
Everyone was doing it. I disclosed that to Jackie. We're good. Someone, and I'm just going to be extremely blanket here where I'm not talking about myself. A great friend of mine, very respectable, and he had to come later because he was driving.
Yeah.
his job is extremely respectable. I really appreciate what he does. He did not partake in smoking because of his job, because he regularly gets drug tested for what he does. He's very elite in what he does. So he didn't do it. And so
Mm-hmm.
then and that's where I broke down in my communication was I disclosed it to Jackie, it's here, everyone here is doing it, and I didn't think when the other guy showed up, I didn't think to disclose, hey, now someone else isn't doing it. To me, it was like, okay, this is the weekend. We kicked it off, whatever. And so that I didn't think to go back and disclose that to Jackie, and that came up at the end of the trip. And so we basically came to it wasn't an argument or a
I mean,
disagreement.
it didn't come up by you, which was hard. So
Right.
it was kind of one of those situations. And the hard thing, I think, to me, the hard thing about this like episode even is like I feel like there's a handful of people who like just assume I'm some like controlling
Mm.
whatever. Like, and that's not the case. I feel like it's hard because it sounds like, man, why does he have to tell you in the first place? It's not that big of a deal. Why this and that? But it's like,
Go back and listen to the first episode. That
yeah, there's reasons why when it comes to this topic it is the way that it is.
no.
But the hard thing about, number one, we had the initial conversation for a reason. Like and it was very clear. So, and the reasoning behind that was like, if everyone's doing it, like I get it. If some people are, it's like you don't need to be one of those people. For multiple reasons. One, like you can be on the side of like, hey, we don't need to do this to have a good time. Whatever. It's like almost in a sense of like being a light or just being able to say no to something or whatever.
Mm.
And we've talked about that too, just with like drinking. Like sometimes it's nice to have someone who is like, like if you're in a crowd and one person's not drinking, it's like, hey, maybe I can be the person who's not drinking with you, like even though I have no issue with drinking, whatever. So there were kind of a few reasons why that was like the decision we came to. So I think at the end when I had found out, just in a very nonchalant way, that one person didn't, and that was like kind of the only thing that we agreed on. It wasn't the end of the world whatsoever, and we weren't like going at it or anything. But it was hard because I was like, okay, did you just lie flat out, or did you just not consider what we talked about fully? Did you intentionally not tell me? It just raised a lot of questions and a lot of I don't know, it was just like, oh, we're better than that. Like why did that happen? Because chances are I would have been very understanding, and like in my mind I was like, oh, you just wanted to do what you wanted to do and you just didn't tell me because whatever. So that was like a piece of it that was difficult because it kind of took me back to like, why can't this thing be like, I'm not asking for a lot, like this is all, I'm making a sacrifice to let this be a thing because it is two people in marriage, and it is, my feelings do matter and I'm very aware of that. And so do his, which is why I'm not like, no, don't do it. I don't like it, So it felt like I wasn't fully considered. It was like, whatever. And there's other things too, I feel like.
And so that I guess that's the gist of the story. Now, there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of different things in this that we've been talking about, working through.
Communication.
Yeah. And so I think part of it is communication, 100%. The other part, though, is like, and this is something that I've realized, like walking away from the weekend, it was a great weekend. However, there was something about it that was just like after this went down and then talking through it with Jackie and hearing her perspective, there's something about it that doesn't sit well with me that I've been wrestling with in terms of priority. So it's like I went into the weekend saying, like, knowing that I'm a dad, knowing that I have, I'm a husband, I'm a dad, all these other things. I go into this weekend and to me it's like finally like a weekend to myself with my friends.
Unplug, chill.
Yeah, unplug and chill.
Be whoever, whatever.
Yeah. And so there's like the thing that I think I'm wrestling with is like I go to a weekend and is my character before I leave the same as when I'm there and the same when I come home? Is that to me that is the person that I'm trying and I feel like I should become. And so then when this stuff happens, that makes me question. And really, it was a good test, I think. Like, if I look back on it, I'm not, I definitely didn't pass this test. But it was, I look at it as a test showing me where I'm really at and showing me still what I need to work on. So that was definitely one of them. Also, keeping a priority of responsibilities and like going somewhere, I'm reminded that even though I might not be available, I might be out of touch, that still doesn't void me of the responsibilities responsibilities to my wife, to my children. Yes, I'm not going to be at home helping with the kids, but does that mean then that I'm the type of person that should just abandon them? And I didn't abandon them.
No.
I'm checking in, I'm sending texts, but also it's like I'm trying to be present there with my friends, relaxing. So those moments are far and few between, but I definitely took it to an extreme of not considering Jackie, not even considering, kids. It's like, oh, bedtime. Daddy didn't call for bedtime. Where's Daddy? Like, when's he coming home? And it's things that Kennedy, Evan's too young. Kennedy definitely understands that, but when I hear it from a different perspective, I'm reminded like, oh, I didn't do a good job of considering them. I didn't call at bedtime. I would call in the mornings and, again, we would communicate some throughout the day, but it was it was like a lack of intentionality to higher priorities of life.
I think the day before you left was when I brought it up, and it was like I wasn't upset with you, and I said that, but I think I felt like, oh, this isn't really how we do things. And I think that was, it'd be one thing if I was like, I want you to call me all the time and text me. Like, I think I was really good at giving you your space. I was excited. Like, I wanted you to have the best time. I wanted you to go on this trip. Of course, it was like, oh, I'm going to miss you. But like, I could not wait. And I was, told everyone like how deserving you were of this trip and all that kind of stuff. So it was never like, I never expected for us to just be in contact all the time. But I think, like you said, like from my perspective, it was like, okay. And even, I don't know, I think of like, the trip, a sister trip that I took like months ago to the same place. It was like the parallel, like the difference. It's like, of course it's not always convenient to like step away, because I get it. Like there's so many conversations happening and you're just unplugging and you're having fun and you're without your kids, which is like the best feeling sometimes. And just like you get just this full break. But by the end of the trip, it was like, oh, this is kind of hard. Like I was so excited for you to come home, and now I'm kind of like, oh, my feelings are a little hurt because I feel like I'm like nothing to you, or like I'm not even a thought, or, you know, typically with us, it's like, and I appreciated the efforts that you did make, but I think by the end of it, it was like, you're just like checking me off a list. Like, let me check in. Oh, I'm like, I'm taking a nap. Oh, I'm like, whatever. It was like, we haven't had one real conversation in 4 days, like there's so many things happening in my life right now within those 4 days that I haven't even had like my best friend to communicate with. And of course, not the time to like sit and have a 30-minute conversation, but it's like, I thought of, just like bedtime, or I'm putting the kids down, and, I pictured, it's like you had the time and the freedom to step away and to call, to FaceTime, which we had said like, oh, I'm going to FaceTime, whatever, for their sake, and so me being like, oh, I'm going to put the girls down, or like Kennedy calls or something, and I don't hear for like hours, or I'm like, hey, I'm going to go to sleep, and I hear from you at like 2 a.m. It was like, I don't know, I understood it, but it was like, is this how we do things? Like, is this how we want to do things? I feel like we have a higher standard for ourselves, so it wasn't like, oh, this is so wrong. But I think you were also surrounded by people who were doing the same. And that's the piece I feel like that we came out with, was like,
regardless of your circumstances,
yeah,
are you living the life that you feel like you should be living?
yeah. Because it's like, on one hand, you can be like, well, everyone unplugged. No one was calling their wife. But it's like, okay, but is that you? Like, is that your best?
And is that us?
Is that us? Is that the way you want to do things like this? Because I feel like when I'm gone, you would expect, me to like answer your calls or respond, or you'd feel like a little shafted if I didn't respond. Shafted. If I didn't respond till 3 a.m. and I'm like, hey, babe, sorry, I missed bedtime, but love you, I'm going to bed, and you're like passed out already. So it's like, I think a lot of it was just like, okay, remember to put yourself in my shoes. And even like character wise, when you say, like, I don't think you like dropped the ball so hard. Like, that's not the case, but I think you saw some inconsistencies with like who you are here versus like who you were there, with just like little things,
Hey guys, just want to take a quick second here to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Cozy Earth. Cozy Earth is a company that produces bedding, towels, loungewear, pajamas. I personally have been wearing their men's pajamas now for over the past month, and I gotta say that they are my new favorite set of PJs. Very comfortable. I love how it's a t-shirt and pants. They're fitted, not too fitted, but breathable, and I just feel right wearing a matching set of PJs around the house.
Yeah, no, they're absolutely amazing. They're made from the softest viscose from bamboo. It literally feels like a heavenly, breathable, kind of like thin, I don't know, it's magical. Feels incredible. Side note, for Mother's Day would be the absolute perfect gift. I personally love wearing actual pajamas. Like, I used to wear a t-shirt to bed, and I feel like, yeah, there's just something about a matching set. So
it's an elevated game.
Yes, we have a wonderful code for you guys. It's 35% off using code NEVERTMI. So definitely take advantage. Their bedding is incredibly soft. Again, the loungewear, the PJs, they have so many different styles for men and women. So definitely jump on that. Code is 35% off. NEVERTMI. Happy shopping.
And we've talked about this as well. And it's not to say that I have to be the same person, the exact same person that I am with my kids than I am with like professional adults. Like, that's not what we're talking about. But we are talking about from a character standpoint of like, are you living the way that you say that you would live here, regardless of anywhere, essentially. And so
in your talk and your conversation and your actions, it's like, would that be something that would be consistent? Because I feel like the conversations that we had, you found yourself like not ashamed, but somewhat like, oh, this isn't fun, to talk about, because it's like, oh,
Right,
maybe not.
and that's the thing. It was eye opening to me to see, if there was a lesson learned. There's a lot of lessons learned. One of them is in situations like that, considering your spouse from the other point of view.
Yeah.
And I definitely can say after this experience, I was definitely selfish, and I think I thought that I earned the right to be selfish.
Yeah.
Like
I'm
going
sure.
into it,
Yeah.
which is a misconception.
Like, this is my time to be selfish.
Yeah, it's my time to
Yeah.
completely unplug, but I did it in such a way that was like I avoided responsibilities that I obviously am bound to until I die, in a sense. And that is being a husband and being a father. And
a man of God. And
yeah, yes, absolutely.
yeah.
And so it's like those things can't just take a back seat. And we've talked about this in other episodes, but
Yeah.
something that we're really working on and feel pressed upon is to live a life of priority.
Yeah.
And that for us, that is God, spouse, children, family, and then after that is, occupational, like whatever that is,
Hobbies.
yeah,
Whatever.
And it just, it's the trickle down effect. And health, personal health is definitely up there as well. But
Probably above work, honestly.
no. And so it's very clear though that after this experience, after this weekend, I was not living that priority out. Now, that doesn't mean I need to give Jackie my time of day. We definitely believe that in whatever you're doing, you need to be present to give your best. And so with friends I haven't seen in a long time, I'm trying to be present, and Jackie totally understood that. She was a bigger advocate.
Yeah, it's like just like
weekend.
you putting yourself in my shoes, I have to put myself in your shoes. It's like,
right. And
I'm not sitting here.
You were probably the biggest advocate for this whole weekend. And so, well, yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but.
Well, I think I interrupted you, so it's fine. No, I think that's good, and I think, one interesting thing you said that I wanted to note was like, by the end of the trip, you could see like, oh,
That's a good.
I'm being influenced by my surroundings, whether good or bad. It's like you could tell kind of like a decline, and it's like you're a bunch of college guys getting together. The expectation, this is not like a spiritual retreat. I'm sure everybody's kind of like letting loose and having the best time and whatever. But it was interesting to me, and just goes to show how important it is in your everyday life, who you're surrounded by, who are those people that are speaking into your life, who are those people that you're doing life with, because for you, you're like, I wasn't necessarily like the proudest, coming home. It wasn't like I'm so excited to tell Jackie all these things. I'm so like, man, refreshed, and that was just good, and I'm proud of myself, which like I think we've always been like part of our relationship has kind of always been like debriefing a situation. We'll go to your parents' house, and it's like, I remember we weren't even married, but it would be like on our drive back to Chicago, it's like, how did that go? How do you feel like you were? How, whatever. It's like, how was this person? How, like, I feel like it's like an intimacy aspect of our relationship, like an emotional intimacy, where it's like, let's get on the same page. Tell me how this went. Let's debrief. How did you feel about yourself? Which I love. And like, I never, in all of these conversations, like, I know the man that Seth is. Like, I know you're literally the best to me. Like, by far the best man, that just father, husband, like, you're incredible to me. So it wasn't like any of this was like, ugh, I can't believe you. But it was just like, no, we got to have some real conversation, and debrief here. But that was just an interesting thing that you kind of were like, it wasn't something like you didn't leave like, man,
Like I acted in a way that I
you feel like
wish
you
I would have
compromised.
acted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do feel like I compromised. And this isn't a knock on anyone other than
Well, absolutely
myself.
not.
Like, yeah, I'm not judging anyone else's lifestyle. This is purely between me and Jackie and what we feel is the best way to go about living our relationship, based on
Yeah.
our experiences with it and our vision for it going forward. And
And
so,
just like every relationship, every marriage, every couple has to set their own standards. So, like, that's not to say someone could have gone there and not spoken a word to their spouse, and that could have been fine for them because
right.
that is not like a point in their marriage or relationship or whatever that they have like set a bar on or whatever. Like, and that doesn't make it wrong or bad or anything. So I think it is important to, set those expectations up and have some, not goals, but whatever, like expectations, I guess,
No.
of your relationship personally.
And I think the other thing though that you were talking about, like coming back with a sense of, and again, it's not about the people there, and it's not even necessarily about the situation, but I would say it's worth considering the situations that you're going to be in. And it's not to say that we should avoid any situation that's going to provide
Totally.
potential conflict or adversity. But I think the biggest thing is, do you have accountability before you go into situations like that? And that's the other thing I've learned is knowing that weed has been something in our past, knowing, I think we did good things in terms of talking about it. We had a game plan. I failed to execute the game plan. But then when I did fail, I didn't disclose that, or that wasn't disclosed until the end of it. But then it's like, who in my life am I surrounding myself with, so that when I do go out and go to these certain things, because again, this is a friend group of, I've known these guys for literally 10 years now, or no,
More than
more
that.
than 10 years, probably like 15 years.
Yeah.
And so, like, great guys. I love these guys. Like, I would, if they called and needed something, I would do whatever I could.
Yeah.
But like, who do I then have, like, knowing Jackie and I's stance on relationship, who in my life is keeping me accountable to do those things in my relationship? Because even though I'm super close to these guys, I don't really get to talk to them much. Like, these aren't people that are, we check in maybe every few months, and again, some of these guys I haven't seen in years. So like, I wasn't going into a place necessarily with tons of accountability.
Yeah.
Like, in that place. So the thing that I've learned is I need to have the accountability system set up in my life outside that I can then, and accountability is always a two-way street. That's something.
It's only as good as you make it.
Right. So if I fail to disclose to my accountability partner, then that's totally on me as well. But
And even just somewhat like, and I'll ask, what you would do differently, next time or going into like a situation next time. I know you touched on it a little bit, but that'll be my last question. So you can kind of think about that. But I want to speak to like the other person too. Like, for me, I think it's so easy to be like, man, you didn't live up to my expectations of this, and you disappointed me, and you didn't meet my standard of what I thought this was gonna look like, and you made me feel like this. It's easy to do that, and I think one of the hardest things, but one of the most fruitful things, like, is obviously for me something I really have been working on for a long time, and probably for the rest of my life will have to work on, is self-control. So like every part of me, like, you know, in conflict or when I'm frustrated or hurt, like I want to hurt you. Like it's like that's just my way of defense. It's like a self-protection thing. It's like if you hurt me, I'm gonna hurt you. I'm not gonna go cry. I want you to feel what I feel. And so I can be, that's just part of my personality, always has been. But something like in this, it was a great opportunity for me to love him well and to express myself in a mature, emotionally mature way, and to be patient. Like for me to wait and like bring something up to him till he came home took like everything inside of me. But like, or even on the phone when it was like, I just want to communicate with you. I'm not upset with you. Like I was like enraged, but to communicate, and I absolutely could have done better still. But like, there's something that I have just been like thinking about, that I was forced to think about this past week, is like, this man is not perfect. The more that I take him off of the pedestal in my life, and the more that I, like, God is unfailing. He will never fail me. He will never hurt me. He is not going to forget what we talked about. Like, he's not going to not call me. Like, he's unchanging, steady, reliable, perfect. He's the best friend we could ever have. So when he's on like the throne of my life, that sounds dramatic, but when he's like number one, and my security is in that, it takes so much pressure off of Seth to perform or be this person that he may not be, or that he wants to be. Like, there's room for error. And it also takes like I can breathe, because it's like, I know you're not perfect. Like, I know that you're just like, for me, I would hate to be with someone who just, anytime I messed up or had like, didn't understand. Me especially, like, it hurts my feelings if someone like doesn't have grace with me. So I can't imagine being with someone who just was like disappointed with me all the time, or just expected more than I feel like I could give, or who wasn't a safe place that I could mess up with. Like, you're human. I cannot look at you and be so thrown off and so shocked and so surprised that you weren't perfection. Like, it's like, okay, this came up. Let's deal with it. This isn't fun. This is not my favorite. But like, what do we do differently next time? I feel like, my goal, and any spouse's goal or whatever, should be, I want to be a non-judgmental, safe place for you to know that you can mess up, and like, we'll work together for this. It helps with honesty. Like, I'm so thankful that like we didn't necessarily have to deal with any like lies or just complete like betrayal of trust. Like, that was such a gift to me. That was a blessing, because that is a huge part of our past. And so while on one hand it was like, okay, like we could do some things better next time, like it was also like, thank you, Lord, that we've grown, that like, Seth is the man that he, like, it just, I could have just been like, I'm so disappointed and I can't believe this, but it's like, no, it's just not that serious. Let's just tweak the things we need to tweak and move forward. And I don't know, it's been, even the past few days since you've gotten home, it's been really special when, I don't know, whatever. So my point is, for the women or the men who are on my like end of things in whatever situation, like just having grace, like it's better for you, it's better for them, it's better for your marriage. But yeah, back to my question, and we'll end with this. What's something you feel like, okay, next year, say you do this again, like what's something you feel like you would that would help you to do to like set yourself up for more success, or so you come home like proud and not feel like you compromised and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely say, I think, again, the thing that we did right was we did talk about it beforehand. I think that, we talked about like how to handle, if weed is there, what do we do? I don't think we didn't really talk about communication expectations, but I think that's something that we've now learned as we've talked through it and after. So I would definitely go in with a different expectation of one, remembering priority, and knowing that I can't vacate priorities just because I'm going to go. And so like defining what that is, I think is important for you and your relationship. So if,
If that's a call before bedtime
right,
and a text in the morning, fine.
yeah, and whatever it is for the situation, because again, the caveat to this whole thing is I wasn't on a work trip. I was literally going to chill with friends at
The beat
the beach, like
all day.
yeah. And so it was like I think that the one thing that we had scheduled was literally like a fishing guide coming to basically fish for us, and then we just would reel them in. So like, there was no agenda. Like I did have the time that I could have devoted to doing this stuff. Granted, it's a different story if I was going on a trip, but we had tons of excursions planned and all this stuff like that. That changes the environment. So I would definitely say defining, knowing what's expected, and then defining the expectation, and just communication is key. Like that's the thing.
Absolutely.
I broke communication. I didn't do what we said that we had talked about. I didn't execute that. Even though I executed most of it, I didn't do everything. And so obviously that is a character issue in terms of just not following through with what I said I was going to do. I definitely think having accountability in place, and in this situation, you were definitely the accountability, I think, but also then having,
like a male outside friend or something.
Yeah, I definitely think that would be important. How that would actually fit into the weekend. It's not like knowing what my triggers are, I think is obviously big. And so again, that's going to come down to what we discuss to say like, if it's, and
because like I don't want to be your accountability. It's like I want to be your wife. I want to be.
Yeah, and honestly, just thinking about this in a vulnerable spot, it's like I do think one of the questions is this a habit to continue in life or not? Like that's definitely a question worth asking. It's hard because I really enjoy it. I don't do it often, but when I do it, it's relaxing. I like the way that it makes me think. Like
like there's not a lot of like, it's not like a terrible for you habit that.
Yeah, and it's just like,
which I get.
So that's a question that I think I would have to wrestle with between now and the next time, the next go around.
Yeah,
definitely those two things would be key.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
No, I think that's good. I mean, again, it wasn't like nothing was like, what would you do differently? Because this was so bad. I was just interested in like, because I care about how you feel too. I care about how you feel about yourself. I care about how you feel Like I want you to have that like internal peace of like, this was just a great, fun, amazing trip. And I feel good about myself, feel good about whatever. So I was just curious as to like, what do you think would help in that? And I do think there's like a time and a place for a spouse. I think it's absolutely possible to be accountability, but I also think that it's not always necessarily fun for the accountability partner. And I didn't expect that was not the role that I was trying to take on this trip whatsoever either. I feel like I can see why it might have like felt that way for you with like checking in and being like, oh, it is here. And it's like, those were the check-in points, which I get for you. You're like, well, I'm just, updating you on these things. And then, but for me, it was like, okay, like we can talk about something else, or like, but are you having fun? Like, so I feel like sometimes it, I do see having like an outside accountability, if even necessary.
And I don't even think accountability always has to be
a phone call or like a check-in.
Yeah. Right, but even just, and I think a person should be involved, but it's not like the person has to always
You're not
have
like answering
presence.
to them. Yeah.
Right. And so I think when I say accountability, though, as I'm thinking about it and hearing you talk, I think for me, the thing that I probably left just feeling like I wish I would have done that better is the consistency of the person that I want to be.
Yeah.
And that I think is like, and
that's a lifelong.
It is a lifelong thing, and I know that not every day is going to be the exact same, but it's like, was I being, like, are there staples that I want in my life as daily habits? And again, I know I'm going on vacation. I'm going to sleep, I'm going to sleep in. I'm not setting alarms, like, but like, am I still living up to, or maybe even having the habits in place that I'm not completely vacating, like having some type of boundary in terms of habits of like, okay, and that was the other hard thing. It's like food, like, and granted, we're trying to do it on a budget. We went to the grocery store, we stocked up, like one-stop shop.
And you're on vacation. There's a time and a place.
But it's like, well, yeah, and that's where,
balance
is definitely key. But that's the other thing I think about is like, do I have even habits in my life to help me stay within certain boundaries? And not that, maybe it's one habit. Maybe it's like,
I saw you stretching.
You saw me stretching?
Whenever you called, you were like stretching in the morning.
Oh, I was like,
surprise! No, when you would FaceTime in the morning, if you FaceTimed in the morning, you were stretching. Maybe that was literally one time, but I assumed that you stretched in the morning.
I did. And it's like I did
like,
some
good.
of the habits.
Yeah.
I didn't do some of the other habits. And so it's just like,
and I think that isn't necessary. I think more so character, like not necessarily even like habit wise, because some habit, like I can work out every day and go on vacation, and I'm not going to be like, man, I got to get up and hit the gym, but like character wise, integrity wise, like,
that's
am I the same person? Not necessarily am I doing the same things that I always do.
Yeah. But then even to that though, it's like after 4 days of eating stuff that you don't normally eat, you can
get off the bandwagon.
Feel it, like, and it's just like, is that
worth it?
Yeah. And so those are just the questions I'm asking myself as I think about your question. But I don't know. I know that this is probably a little
I think it's good. It's real.
And we're just, again, this is something that we've had to work through this past weekend, and we're just being real with, like, I hope that our relationship can be encouragement to someone out there, not because we're perfect, but because
we're
we're
not.
real.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do. Clearly, I wasn't perfect. I made multiple mistakes in this experience, and we're working through it. And this is like, these are the conversations that we're having. These are the things that we're talking about. These are the things that I'm feeling convicted about, and the things that, the ways that Jackie feels about it. And just like, I don't know, we've always said this, but relationships require a lot of work. And I hope this can be a real example to someone of like what real work can look like. It doesn't have to look like this, but it's not always perfect.
But also the work isn't always like grueling it's like, I don't know, I feel like we've had
It's definitely
a past wonderful few days where we're flirting and giddy and intimate and all this kind of stuff. It's like, it doesn't have to be the narrative of your marriage. Like, marriage takes work, and it's every single day that it takes work, but like, it can also literally just be the best. Like, we're not at a point. There was a point, and there will probably forever be seasons that ebb and flow of like, that marriage relationship work that you're putting in takes precedence, and it feels like a lot, and it feels heavy and overwhelming. But there's also seasons where it doesn't have to be. Like, even this trip, it's not like I look back and it was like this big thing. Like, it wasn't. And even now it's like, yeah, there's things that we like learned, and hopefully, like Seth said, like that this can be helpful for you to see, like, I don't know, just an example of conversation and communication and the work part of it, but it doesn't have to take over. It doesn't need to be negative. It doesn't need to be.
I think this is definitely more work in terms of like reconciliation.
Yeah.
And it's not like to your point.
Yeah.
There were
true.
seasons where we were reading books, we were listening to podcasts, like, how do you make this work? And so like, everything is a building block. Essentially, the things that you take and you apply, that becomes a building block to your relationship.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the work is then applying those skills or those things that you've learned, and sometimes it literally is just having the conversation and talking through it. Like, when I say relationships take a lot of work, it's not like you're going to go out and like, that work isn't like I'm going to go out in the yard and dig a hole. Like, it's a different type of work. It takes work and it takes commitment, just like that. But it's work in such, a much more mental, heart posture, emotional, spiritual
growth.
Yeah. Like, you're learning, you're growing, you're working through it, you're making mistakes, you're communicating, like, that I guess is what I mean.
I mean, and like, it's a dying to yourself. Like, it's not just me in this thing.
Yeah, it's the work of selfless sacrifice.
Yeah.
Is what a relationship should be. And that, I guess, that would be my parting words is this experience in this weekend. I can see from Jackie's perspective where I overstepped in terms of my selfishness, and that compromised our relationship. I was overly selfish in terms of doing what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it, and not considering from your perspective what that was costing you. And so.
And last thing, I promise. Like, these things are so good. So if you, like, I'm so thankful for the little roadblocks and the little hiccups and all that kind of stuff, because they're refining and they're positive and literally necessary for a healthy relationship. Like
this week, that experience makes our relationship a lot stronger.
Absolutely. I feel closer.
Yeah.
I feel it's not a feeling, like, we are literally continuing to become one. And those moments are ones that get you there a little quicker.
And to that point, though, it's like it's vulnerability that's given us the most growth. Like
Yeah,
when we're
absolutely.
vulnerable and real and transparent with
Totally.
one another
Totally.
about these things, and it's like a relationship is really hard, and I've learned this the hard way. Like going back to episode 1, like with our whole story, like it failed because of lack of transparency,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where you can get caught up in is this right or is it wrong to do this? And at the end of the day, I think sometimes the bigger question is like, are you guys being honest?
Mm-hmm.
But are you then also like working together with your spouse as opposed to doing it individually?
Mm-hmm.
Am I doing this in transparency, or am I doing it, what's the other word? Sneakily.
Sneakily.
And so
in
when
the dark or hidden or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
like knowing
In
like
isolation.
knowing that or even not knowing how they might
Yeah.
respond to it. It's like I'm doing this, not knowing if you're gonna like it or not,
Yeah.
or knowing that you are or you're not gonna like it. I'm doing it anyway. So I think that is the biggest key is
Yeah.
living transparent with your spouse. Like that's the point that you have to
Yeah.
get to for real growth to happen. And so when we have these moments like that and we can be transparent,
Mm-hmm.
that's where I feel like, yeah, the situation sucked. We worked through it. But when I look back on it as a whole, we are way more
Yeah.
together now than we were before it happened
Yeah.
because of what happened.
And I think delivery, like honesty and vulnerability in your delivery as well. Like Seth or I, like, for example, like I was like going to send him a picture, an inappropriate picture. But I was going to send him a picture and he's like, oh, you never sent me a picture. And I was like, instead of being like, oh, yeah, I forgot. Or like, yeah, you didn't deserve a picture. Like, I literally was like, like, I was just vulnerable. I was like, I didn't feel like you would have cared. I didn't feel like I was like on your mind. I didn't feel like, though in my response and my humility and my willingness to be vulnerable, he's going to know me a lot better, and he's going to have a more accurate picture of like who I am and where my heart is at and my struggles and insecurities and my whatever, than if I were just to be like, sorry, I forgot, or like scared to tell him that like, no, I actually didn't really feel like a priority, and I just didn't, and I didn't mean anything by it, but like I didn't, like it is so necessary. And for Seth, it's such a gift for him to be like, I wasn't necessarily super proud of myself. Like for a man that I respect and love and, think the world of, for him to be able to humble himself and be like, I could make it seem like I'm the best and I was, top notch and all that kind of stuff, which he absolutely could have done. Like for him to be willing to be vulnerable and open, it's like, man, I love that. And that is where that emotional, like the intimacy that really, really matters, comes from. So we hope this was helpful for anyone, and it was nice to be able to like debrief, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was kind of the past several days, and just what we went through. We just want to share it with you guys. So thanks for listening.
Yeah.
If you've made it thus far.
Yeah, thank you for everyone who tunes into this podcast. We really appreciate it, and we hope that we can provide some type of value to y'all.
And snaps for our daughter not coming in here after or waking up from her nap and coming in here. Like she has for the last 5 times.
Yeah. So again, I'm Seth.
And I'm Jackie.
And this is Never TMI.
Never.
And we are signing off.
Peace out, y'all.